coming to this program, Driving Tips for Seniors, and actually for everybody. I think this is really not just for a certain age group. I really think it's for everybody, a good refresher course. And we want to welcome today top 10 driving tips for active older adults. And here today we have Jeremy Randall, Director of Operations for In Control Crash Prevention Training, and John Paul, Senior Manager of Public Affairs and Traffic Safety at AAA. And John Paul is called the Car Doctor, and he has a radio show, WBOQ 104.9 FM. So check it out. And you can always email me for more information on that. And Temple Emmanuel is grateful to the Temple Emmanuel Senior Fund, Temple Emmanuel Adult Education, the Charles River YMCA Needham, and the Newton Senior Center for promoting this program. And again, we thank Jeremy Randall and John Paul for graciously giving of their time as a community service to our temple and to our Newton active older adults. I just want everyone to know that this talk will be videotaped. If there's two speakers will speak for about 45 minutes, and then we will open it up to questions and answers. There's a chat little icon on the bottom of your screen. If you know how to use it, you can chat to Tracy, and I will relay the questions to the hosts. If you can't figure out the chat icon, which I know is many people, it's not so easy to find it on the screen, that's okay. Just raise your hand when we're asking for more questions, and we will scroll down. And Caitlin is the tech staff from Temple Emmanuel. She will have send you a bar across the screen to unmute yourself. You just click on that to unmute yourself, and you can ask the question. So questions will come up probably about sometime around 5:45. And we're good to go. So thank you, Jeremy Randall, and thank you, John Paul. And I'm very excited to offer this presentation. So take it away.
Thanks, Tracy. So welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As Tracy said, my name is Jeremy Randall. I'm from In Control Crash Prevention Training. And what we do at In Control is basically, teach safe driving and community engagement as far as safe driving goes. So just want to make sure John gets a chance to introduce himself, and then we'll get started right away.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, my name's John Paul. I've been with AAA now for a little bit more than 35 years. So I've been at the Auto Club for a long while. Part of my job at the Auto Club is really trying to help people with driving and age-related issues. When I started doing this 35 years ago, well, I was much younger then. So all the things I talk about in kind of my daily job really has come to are really things that I look at now as I'm getting older as well. So we're going to take you through some of the tips, and really Jeremy and I talked about this earlier. Really, this is all about driving safer longer. We know that the longer you drive, the longer you live, but you need to do it safely, and that's what this presentation is all about.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. So let's get right into it today. The first thing we want to look at is just, what are the problems that we have? And in general, we know that older adults, older drivers in general, tend to actually drive a bit safer in a lot of ways. And so we want to make sure we acknowledge that senior drivers tend to wear their seatbelt a lot more often than younger drivers in many cases. You tend to drive when the roads are safer. Tailgating is often. And, all these things are really positives, but there certainly are negatives too that come along. And so driving overall is the #1 cause of unnatural death for people of any age here in the United States. And so we definitely have a problem. And, John, you and I were talking, and older adults, when there is a crash, often the results are a lot worse, right? The crash can be a lot more severe as far as injuries and obviously deaths as well.
Yeah, so that's absolutely true, because what happens is we look at the most unsafe drivers on the road, and we know, anybody who's out on the road on a regular basis knows typically it's kids, and it's kids because they don't have what everybody in this room has, and that's experience. And drivers, you need, let's face it, you need 5 years or so of good driving to become really a competent driver. And as we get a little bit older, we get better, but still, As we get older still, once we get over the age of 75 or 80, fatality rates go up, and they go up because our bodies become more fragile. And that crash that maybe we could survive when we were 25 is hard for us to survive when we're 75 and 80, when our bones are more fragile. And even though we tend to wear our seatbelts more and we drive a little bit slower, in the event of a crash, it can be a lot more serious result when it's over.
Absolutely, and that's what this whole presentation is about. As John said, how can we drive safer longer? So as we get right into it here, the first one's really staying physically active. Actually, the first couple tips are going to sort of avoid the actual being in the car, and it's more about making sure you're well prepared. So, we do senior driving classes at In Control, and one of the things we're always talking about is how active are we in general, and then how will that relate to our ability to move and even see inside the car. So even neck stretches and other activities can be a big benefit in general, and then obviously they're going to help when we're in the vehicle as well.
Yeah, that is so true, Jeremy. And I look at even now, since COVID, I've been working at home since March. And just a couple weeks ago, I had a doctor's appointment and we got chatting a little bit. And really, I over the last couple of weeks, I decided, you know what? I need to get up and get out and go for a walk. And I'm trying to walk a couple miles every day now, just to try to stay a little bit more physically active, because I know that the better you are, as far as, I like to think of your body as mechanics. The better you are mechanically, you're going to be that much safer driver. So you're right. If you're just sitting around and it becomes hard to turn your head to be able to look for that car in your blind spot, chances are you're not going to do it, and that's where the crashes can start.
Absolutely. And it's just, obviously being in better shape in an event of a crash as well, which obviously we want to prevent, but being in better shape is going to help you survive that crash or come out of it better on the other side as well. So definitely staying active, make sure you're stretching, you're doing whatever you need to do. The programs at the senior center there or at the temple, obviously are going to be big benefits that you guys should utilize, even if they're just through Zoom. Everything's new here with COVID for sure. So moving right along to number 2, making sure that you have all of your tests done, right? So we're pointing out our vision and our hearing. So those are 2 really big points when it comes to driving. The hearing is obviously incredibly important inside the car, and looking at things like nighttime driving and how dangerous that can be, regardless of age and vision. We want to make sure that all of our abilities are absolutely at their peak.
Yeah, vision is so important. And what happens is, as we age, you might think the light bulbs in your house aren't as bright as they used to be. No, unfortunately, that's not the case. Between the time we're 20 years old and we're 60 years old, we need 3 times as much light to see. By the time we get 80 years old, if we're still driving, we need 4 times as much light to see. And the other part of it is, too, our ability to be able to react to glare, to react to bright headlights, headlights that are not aimed properly. That takes much longer. So it's a function of age. But again, that doesn't mean you need to quit driving. You just need to be aware that you need more light to be able to see. And the other thing, that some testing that we've done at AAA, most newer cars, unfortunately, when you're driving at 40 miles an hour or faster, you're actually out driving your low beam headlights. So even if you have good vision, even if you're a young guy like Jeremy and you have good vision, what happens is you really start to need to use your high beams really actively on a lot of cars today. Of course, you dim them when someone's coming the other way, but you want as much light on the road as possible so you can see where you're going.
Now, John, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever looked into the nighttime driving glasses, the one specifically for night driving?
Yeah, I have, and I will say very unscientifically. I have tried them. I found no benefit whatsoever. At AAA, we run a novice driving school, and a lot of our instructors are older. And, they're retirees, they're doing this for a little something to do. And this one woman who used to come in, she had the night driving glasses. And I said to her, what do you think of them? Because I've talked to some ophthalmologists and got their opinion. And she said, she looks at me and she got kind of right in my face and looked at me and said, they won't work for you. And I said, why is that? She said, I'm not sure why, but they work better with lighter color eyes. If you have blue or hazel eyes, they tend to work better. And when you have brown eyes, they don't tend to work as well. When I talked to an ophthalmologist, he gave me a little different view. He said, you know what? I don't know why they should work, but if they seem to work for you, use them. So again, I don't see the benefit, and probably somewhere in my house here, there's still a pair of them, and I don't see it. I wear sunglasses during the day to protect against glare, and regular glasses at night when I'm out driving around. But the night vision glasses didn't help me. But if you have, if you have lighter color eyes, blue, hazel, green, $20, give them a shot, I guess.
Right. John, here's what I found. When you have your windshield, when your windshield's very clean, they don't seem to make any difference at all. If your windshield is dirty and there's a lot of glare coming from the headlights towards you, they seem to reduce that glare a little bit. Yep. So I guess rather than even spending the $20, make sure your windshield's clean.
Yeah,
which is a good rule all the time anyway.
It's a good rule all the time, and I will give you, this comes from my wife's tip of how to clean your windshield. And there's two kinds of window cleaner she likes. One is called Invisible Glass. It's by Stoner Products. The other one's Sprayway. They're both aerosol type cleaners. They're not the blue stuff in the bottle. And clean the window as clean as you can get it with paper towels, then go over it with a microfiber cloth afterwards. The microfiber cloth picks up that last little bit of dirt, and she hides the Sprayway cleaner from me, so I don't overuse it. But yeah, it's the Sprayway cleaner does a really good job. And what happens with cars today, there's so much plastic and foam inside the cars, it actually outgasses, and it brings this film on the inside of the window. And I found that Sprayway and Invisible Glass do a really nice job of cutting that film. And I used to think it was just on new cars, but it happens for years and years afterwards. So get the windows good and clean. It's amazing what it does for your nighttime vision.
Absolutely. It's like driving a new car sometimes, right? You all of a sudden you clean everything up and you're like, wow, this feels a lot better. I have a lot better vision. So
Absolutely.
Definitely important to not only, check yourself, but make sure that the car is going to allow you to have good vision as well.
Yeah. And don't forget to clean your glasses.
So John, this one, a AAA is a pretty good feature. So I wanted to know if you wanted to touch on this one to start.
Yeah, we have a computer program called Roadwiserx. Roadwiserx, what's nice about it is you can put in any medication, and we've all read the bottle of medication, and I don't care whether it's a bottle of cough syrup or it's antihistamine or a prescription drug, and it says, don't use this medication while operating heavy equipment. The problem is, to a lot of people, that means, operating a bulldozer, not necessarily your car, which is also heavy equipment. And we know that some drugs, prescription and otherwise, can affect the way you drive. So AAA came out with this computer program called Roadwiserx. And what you can do is you can put in your medications that you're taking, and it will let you know how those medications specifically affect driving. And what's nice about it is maybe you're taking high blood pressure medication, but high blood pressure medication, sometimes when you take them with an over-the-counter medication, they have a synergistic effect. So one can affect the other, and it can affect the way you drive. So you might put in the one medication and you're like, oh no, it's fine. But you put in that and something for blood sugar, or again, even an over-the-counter medication, or even a vitamin. And it'll let you know whether those can affect your driving. And we look at things like antihistamines, for instance. Right now this is pollen season still. But if you look at the ingredient in an antihistamine, for instance, it's the same, in a lot of cases, it's the same ingredient that's in over-the-counter sleeping medication. So you don't want to take that antihistamine just before you're getting in the car to go on a 2-hour drive, because chances are it's going to make you sleepy. And all of these different medications can have effect, and even food. And I forget exactly which medication it is, but there's one medication, and if you take it with cheese, it can actually affect the way you're driving. So, it's a free program, roadwiserx.com. You can check it out. And in fact, AAA has a lot of information on their website, seniordriving.aaa.com. You can find Roadwiserx and some other things as well.
Yeah, it's an excellent app to use, especially as you said, the interactions between drugs, right? We can all read those labels. But I would also add, understand how any medication, anything new, especially that you're taking, how it's going to affect you personally, because there are those, the odd situations where something, all of a sudden isn't on the warning, but affects you in a different way. And even, as John said, an allergy medication, right? It affects everybody in a different way. It doesn't seem to make me tired at all, but it'll knock my wife right out. So understand how anything you put in your body is going to affect you and therefore your ability to drive, and just make sure you're making smart choices in that way.
Yeah, it is so important. And you may find that something that makes you feel groggy or somewhat cloudy, if you take it at night, now of course call your doctor or pharmacist to find out, but maybe you can take it at night, and when you get up in the morning, you don't feel the same way as if you took it in the morning and it went on for the rest of the day.
Right, absolutely. So into number 4. All right, we've got wearing our seatbelt, which is incredibly important. We mentioned earlier that seniors tend to wear their seatbelts at least more than the average driver in the United States does. Now, that being said, I want to make sure I talk a little bit about what I think the primary job of a seatbelt actually is. And the primary job to me, it holds you in place and it allows you to control the vehicle, right? So I look at seatbelts as a preventative tool for crashes. Obviously, they're going to help you if there's a crash as well, but by holding you in place and allowing you to control the car, you can use the years of experience behind the wheel. You can use your knowledge and skill set that you already have to make sure that you have that refined control of the car that you might need in the event that you have to avoid a crash, right? And I think that there's a big part of that. By holding your lower body and your upper body stationary in place, you can make refined steering movements. You can hit that brake pedal with a lot of force and feel braced in the seat. And it's going to do a ton to help you avoid the crash in the first place, which is a big deal. John, I know you and I are on the same page on this one for sure, just how important the seatbelt is throughout driving, whether it's maintaining the control, reducing the severity of a crash, or even obviously preventing the injuries or, help keeping you alive if there actually is an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 3 parts of a crash. It's when your car hits something, when you hit something inside your car, and then unfortunately, the most critical part of the crash is when your internal organs start to move inside your, I hate to talk about this at dinner time, but yeah, when your internal organs start to move around. So if you can minimize the crash by wearing your seatbelt, and that's going to at least prevent you from becoming a flying object inside your car. And one of the things is that an object and speed are very much connected together. So 100-pound person at 60 miles an hour in a crash turns into sort of the equivalent of a 6,000-pound person when the crash happens. So even something small in a car, when a crash happens, that weight of that object becomes multiplied. So that's why it's so important for both you, the driver, to wear your seatbelt, but also all the passengers in your car, because they can become flying objects as well. And we're very happy that in New York, for instance, New York never had a rear seatbelt law, and that was just passed just recently, because so often in a crash, people may be in the back seat of a car, they don't have their seatbelt on because there isn't a law for it, and that person comes flying into the front seat. And again, even a 100-pound person at even 30 miles an hour becomes not a 100-pound person, they become a 3,000-pound person. So it's so important to make sure that everybody, driver, all the passengers, are wearing their seatbelts.
Absolutely. It's a big one. It will save your life, and you'll be involved in fewer crashes. You'll have better control of your vehicle if something does go wrong. It's a big part of it for sure. All right, this is a big one. I talked about limited mobility and the need to stretch earlier, but with modern day cars, they've kind of engineered a lot of blind spots out of our vehicles in today's vehicles, but we haven't been updated on how we should adjust our mirrors properly to get rid of it. So I definitely want to talk about, ways we can adjust those mirrors to make sure that blind spot isn't there anymore. So for your rear view mirror, make sure it's centered in the back glass and you can see as far back as you can. You don't want to see the ground right behind your car when you're driving down the highway. You want to see as far back as you can. And then the big one, your side mirrors. So you've got your driver's side mirror. What I encourage you to do, hopefully you guys can see me here. I would encourage you, holding your steering wheel. I want you to tilt your head over so it's almost touching that side window. And then I want you to adjust the mirror so now you can only see a sliver of the back of your car. When you sit up normally and you're centered and sitting comfortably in the seat again, you should not be able to see the side of your car. That's definitely going to feel uncomfortable at first if you have years of experience using the side of your car as a reference. But remember, you can just tilt your head slightly and still see it. But the reality of what that does is it changes the orientation you have with the mirror. And so now what you're looking at is what used to be that blind spot off the back corner of the car. And there's a huge, huge advantage to that. So I still recommend that you have that tilt, right? You still look, right? And if you can turn your head, that's great. But the days of turning your whole body around to try to look behind you aren't necessarily needed anymore without that blind spot. I always encourage people to look, but setting up your mirrors properly can help reduce that, especially as our flexibility and our mobility go down over time.
Yeah, and this is where I look at. I have the somewhat luxury, I guess. I drive about 50 different cars over the course of a year, and I truly believe that some of these car manufacturers are engineering blind spots into the cars because some of them are just absolutely terrible. But every single car I get into, I do this mirror adjustment. Once I get the seat comfortable, once I get the steering wheel comfortable, then I do the mirror adjustments because I want to make sure I've eliminated as many blind spots as possible. And it's a simple adjustment. It does take a little bit of getting used to because you're so comforted by knowing when you look in the side view mirror, you see the edge of your car. But you don't, once you get used to this, you'll find out this is one of those keys to helping extend your driving career because you're going to be able to see more all around your car rather than when the mirrors are tucked in. Basically, your rear view mirror and your side view mirrors are almost seeing the same thing. They're there for different purposes. Take advantage of it.
Absolutely. It's a big deal. And a lot of people, it's something we go over in person and in control. And a lot of people, the one thing they're going to take away from that day, hopefully there's a lot of things, but geez, they come back and say, I can't believe I didn't know this about my mirrors. That was amazing. It was really a game changer for me. And that's a big positive. So definitely reach out and ask questions if you guys want to know more about how to adjust those mirrors. But it is pretty simple. There's a lot of tutorials online about getting rid of that blind spot, moving that mirror out a bit further as well. All right, this is a big one. And I think that a lot of us are already in this boat, but it almost doesn't need to be said, but we can't trust the other drivers. There are so many people out there on the road. Many of them have very little formal education when it comes to driving, and we're just driving on experience alone in many cases. And that is it's an effective way of learning over a very long period of time, but we end up having a lot of bad habits along the way. And so I want to make sure we're always predicting that other driver is going to do the wrong thing, and that way we're always a little bit better protected, for sure.
Yeah, we at AAA, we actually have part of a video clip and it shows a car with a turn signal on. And my question always is, what does that mean? And, most people say, oh, they're going to be taking a right turn. I said, really, all it means is the bulb works because it doesn't really mean anything. They turn their turn signal on, it didn't cancel. They're turning a little bit further down the road, but they turned it on a little early. They decided to make a right turn really quick, so they turned it on at the last minute. So again, it's one of those things that you look at and the idea of not trusting other drivers, it sounds a little weird, but the real part of it is, yeah, don't trust them, trust yourself, don't trust the other people on the road.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've been in the car and I'm making a left turn and there's a car coming from my left side and they're going to be turning right. So in other words, I should just be able to pull right out if I can actually trust them. I am not going to trust that person, right? There's plenty of times where that turn signal's on and they just go directly across right in front of me. And if I had pulled out, I would have been in big trouble. And so it just makes a lot of sense to be sure. Make sure you can only drive, or you only drive, where you have truly open space and you are comfortable that nobody's going to be in that space. Absolutely. So this is another, they're all big ones. Update your driving skills. So as I mentioned earlier, that we tend as a society in the United States to learn through experience. Many times we have driver's ed, there are fantastic driver's ed schools, but a lot of times where their main goal is trying to get the younger drivers their license, they end up teaching sometimes to the test. And a lot of the tests around the country aren't perfect. They're not great. And they're not necessarily doing the job that we would like them to do. They aren't in depth enough. And what ends up happening is we do end up learning through experience a lot. And like John said, 5-6 years in, we've seen a lot of what we're going to see, and we become a much better driver because we're able to predict what's going on a lot more. And certainly as years go on, we're more and more able to predict what other drivers are going to do, and we can become a lot safer that way. The problem is, and as John said, he gets to drive like 50 cars a year, which is amazing. I need John's job over there. That sounds great. But cars are new every year, and they have new features. And sometimes we're not updated on how that new technology works. And that can be a big downside. Something like blind spot monitoring. It's a great technology and it's helpful, right? We want to be able to use it, but we want to make sure we're not relying on the technology alone, that we're still keeping our driving skill where it needs to be so that we can truly be safe behind the wheel and use the safe technology that we have in our cars to our biggest advantage. So I'd like to just tell you about In Control just for a moment. What we do, In Control is a hands-on driving program that really allows you to experience crash type situations, crash avoidance type situations is a better way of saying that, but in a safe environment. So you're actually in a real car on a real course, but the only thing you could potentially hit are cones. And we put you through situations like, well, what if a kid came running out in front of you on the road? How would we hit that brake pedal? What would we do in that scenario? We're putting you through situations. What if your car started to slide on ice? Or what if you were on the highway and a piece of machinery fell off that truck in front of you? So we do senior driving programs specifically at In Control at times, and it involves all the same skills, but we understand that some of the areas that we talk about in our normal course are a little bit different for the teens than they are for experienced adult drivers. And so we change it around a little bit more to tune to the issues that come up more with the age group that we're teaching, if that makes sense. And this is right here in Massachusetts. We're training in South Weymouth, but this is not necessarily an advertisement for In Control. We're a nonprofit, and our goal is to keep the roads as safe as we possibly can. So if you're on a fixed income, give us a call. We'll figure out if there's a way to help that, help with that, or even, get you a scholarship to the program, and you can save money off your auto insurance as well. So it's kind of fine tuning those skills that make somebody a good driver. There's nobody that should just be considered, oh, I'm great, I don't need anything additional. We don't know what we don't know. I know that keeps coming up in my slides here, but the reality is we can all be better even when we're great, even when you're doing everything right. And we're going to teach you how to use a lot of that new technology in the car as well. So John, you guys have a program at AAA as well, correct?
Well, our program is classroom based. It's not behind the wheel based. So we do programs that run anywhere from something like this that's an hour to something that could be 4 hours long. And it goes over again, sort of extending your driving career, not the hands-on approach that you have, which both I have taken and my wife has taken, and really to try to learn some of those extra skills. But you're right. It should be a continual learning process. You mentioned what driving schools do. Driving schools, their sole job is to get somebody their driver's license. Not really to teach people how to drive, but really to try to get someone their driver's license. And let's face it, you have 12 hours of behind the wheel instruction. You're supposed to spend time with your parents. And then I believe I read somewhere, Jeremy, that Dan's daughter, now Dan is the executive director, is that what you?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, his daughter just went and got a road test, and it was 2 minutes long. So a 2-minute long road test, what is that really? How does that really evaluate your driving skill? It doesn't, and that's why nearly half the kids that first get their driver's license get into a crash in the first 6 months because they don't have the skill that everybody in this room has. But that doesn't mean the skill doesn't diminish over time. And that's why programs like In Control and even programs like Today can help you extend that driving career and extend it safely.
It really is. The average driving test here in Massachusetts is about 4.5 minutes long of actual driving, sitting behind the wheel, operating the vehicle. And it just isn't enough to evaluate really anything in that period of time. The other thing I would say, really, no, you know what, John? I'm not sure where I was going with that anymore. So yeah, I'm losing my mind. I'm getting older these days. I'm getting close to 40.
That happens. But in your slide here, you talked about if you become confused while driving, you're concerned about your ability to drive and things like that. That is something that what just happened to you can happen to somebody when they're behind the wheel.
Absolutely.
And you get a little bit distracted. Does that mean you have to give up driving? No, but you need to identify that something did happen. And as we go on here, we'll go over a couple more tips of trying to be safe. But we know that reaction times slow down with age. With the exception of Tom Brady, which I think still has the same reaction times that he did when he was 20. But we're not all like that. And maybe we could, something fell off a table when we were 20 years old, would catch it mid drop. Now we just kind of, it's gonna hit the floor, and that's all there is to it, because our reaction times have changed. Couple our slower reaction time with vision that's maybe not quite as good as it used to be, hearing that's not quite as good as it used to be, flexibility that's not as good as it was when we were teenagers. Put all those things together, and it doesn't sound like that's going to help in your driving, but actually, as long as you're aware of that and you can make up for some of those things, you can continue to drive, and you continue to drive safely. I think, Jeremy, you mentioned once in your class, the oldest person took your class was 94?
96.
96.
Yep, and they actually took the class 6 different times, and they passed every single time. So you might ask, why do they keep coming? They were coming with each one of their great-grandchildren as they were getting their license. And they kept taking it, and they kept on passing. And you can fail our program. And if you fail our program, what it means one of two things. Either you should come back and take it again because there was just something, maybe we just didn't give enough time for you to feel comfortable to actually complete the drill. Or maybe you're actually losing the ability to hit the brake pedal with enough force to fully engage the ABS braking system. And that's actually one of the next tips we'll talk about is ABS brakes in general. But one thing In Control will do is we will give you an honest idea of where you stand when it comes to avoiding a crash. I can't speak to your everyday driving, so I'm not out there with you on the road, but I can evaluate your ability to avoid a crash and potentially save that small child on the road, or prevent injury in a crash that you might get into with another car head on. So if it's something you're interested in, you can always reach out to In Control. We're happy to work with anybody in any way, and we're even doing stuff right now during COVID, and we're offering private groups, private classes, things like that, social distancing, all kinds of different things, or at least talk about what you're comfortable with. But yeah, oldest graduate, 96, and an amazing driver. I mean, he had some fantastic stories too. He's we consider him a friend of the program, a champion of In Control for sure. All right. So tip number 8, if you can avoid backing up, avoid backing up. Try to set yourself up to always go in the forward gear. I mean, the reality is vehicles today are designed to go in the forward gear. They're not necessarily designed to go backwards. Of course, they can do it, but they're going to make all kinds of concessions to be able to go in reverse, whether it's your brakes, your steering, even the seat belts and airbags. They're designed for forward collisions, not necessarily for rear end collisions. And since there is such limited visibility around vehicles today, when you're actually traveling in reverse, I wasn't able to put it in here today, but we have a picture of one of our In Control cars, and they're just small Honda Accords, nothing fancy. And there's 25 children sitting behind the car, and the driver can't see any of them. So the idea is we can't see what's directly around our vehicles. And when we're, backing out of parking spaces or backing up in general, we're sort of backing up blind. So our rules at In Control about backing up, rule number 1, try to avoid it. Set yourself up to go in the forward gear. You're at the grocery store, you're at a parking lot. Take a pull-through space whenever it's available. And then you have a much better head start. And I think we could all use a little bit more exercise walking the extra 25 feet to the door rather than, taking that first spot. If we can't, we have to back up. Okay, that's fair too. We can certainly put ourselves in situations like that. So don't back up very far. Try to minimize the distance that you back up, potentially by going further in the forward gear or adding more steering while you're driving forward. Those can be two big benefits. So if you have to back up, one thing we can do is we get back in to our parking space or our garage space, right? So when you back into a parking space, you get to pass it and you get to see that nothing's there. There's a huge advantage there. Your setup as far as getting yourself in there, turning off, would be in the forward gear, and a lot of the steering is done in the forward gear. Then you have very little steering involved and very little distance when you actually back into that space. And obviously, I think this goes without saying, don't back up fast. In fact, your foot should be hovering or even dragging that brake pedal if you have an automatic transmission. And remember, this even does apply for your garage at home. You might need to set the garage up a little bit differently if this is the way you're going to do it potentially, but it's a huge advantage. Things can change in our driveways overnight. UPS or Amazon are putting packages in front of our garage doors potentially, and people are backing over them left and right. Or somebody parks in a different spot in the driveway, and we back out and we hit another car. They go, I didn't see it. It was a car. It's hard to miss. And that's the reality of it. It is. But when you're going in reverse, you're blind for such a long distance, regardless of age. This is absolute rules for everybody, that we should really try to avoid it whenever we possibly can.
Yeah, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure whenever you back out of a parking space, you're liable.
Yeah.
So whenever you back out of a parking space, back out of a driveway, anytime you do that, even if the person is speeding or whatever the case is, you're going to be the one who's responsible because you're the one in control of the car and you're the one who had to make that decision whether it was safe to pull out or not. And if you back into somebody, you're going to be responsible.
Now, technically speaking, in the state of Massachusetts, it's illegal to back out of your private driveway onto a public road, actually. You can pull off to the side of the road. You could back into your driveway. That's fine. But technically, and this goes to John's point, that it'll always be either your fault if you back into somebody on the road or at least partially your fault, depending on the circumstances. But you will always have some blame there. So trying to avoid that's a big advantage. I'm lucky enough, I have two driveways, but in one of my driveways, I'm backing out to a pretty busy road and I don't have a turnaround. So I made one. I drive on my lawn and that part of my lawn is part of my driveway, right? So that's just the way I've kind of set myself up because it's very hard for me to back into the space. I nose myself into my driveway and then I immediately turn myself around and aim myself out, which is, a heck of a lot safer overall. Heck of a lot safer. All right. Understanding your ABS system, your anti-lock braking system. This is something we go over a lot with drivers of all ages because a lot of people have misconceptions about this. ABS stands for an anti-lock brake system, but it also stands for allows steering and braking. Okay, so let me just tell you quickly how your ABS system on your vehicle works. When you hit the brake pedal as hard as you possibly can, a car without an anti-lock braking system, a non-ABS car, the wheels would stop turning, right? Your car would slide down the road and it doesn't really stop very effectively at that point. You've lost your grip and your traction of the road. And so it takes you about 25% longer to stop. And if you were trying to avoid something, which you probably are if you're hitting the brake pedal that hard, then you might also then try turning the steering wheel to avoid something. But with your wheels locked like that, the car won't change directions either. So an anti-lock braking system prevents those wheels from locking. An anti-locking system for the brakes makes perfect sense. So when you hit that brake pedal hard, the wheels almost lock, but the ABS system kicks in right beforehand. It's got a small sensor that can tell how fast the wheels are spinning, basically can tell when the wheels begin to lock. An ABS computer at each wheel adjusts the amount of pressure in the braking system just enough to keep the wheels spinning. So you maintain your grip and your traction on the road surface, and the wheels in your car don't actually stop till the car physically stops. Now that's what's going on inside that you might not have really known about, but what you hear when you use your ABS system is what most of us have probably heard before, the absolutely obnoxious grinding noise that comes from the car. The pedal is vibrating and pulsating and fighting back under your foot. And it feels like everything is going wrong and I've damaged my car. I have to go get it checked out. What happened? And people instinctually let off the brake a little when they feel that feedback, that obnoxious grinding, that sound. But I want you guys to know that the car is supposed to make that sound. It should make that sound in that situation. In a weird way, it should comfort you and let you know that everything is working exactly the way it should be. right? We want to hear that noise. Good. It means the wheels won't stop turning. I maintain my grip and my traction. And because the wheels are still spinning until the car completely stops, that actually means that you can steer and actually change directions. And so for even myself, originally, my first 4 cars, none of them had ABS brakes. So in an emergency, I had to pick between braking and steering to avoid something. With your ABS system, you can brake and steer to avoid things, but you should hit that brake pedal first every single time. John, anything to add there?
Other than I must have a little OCD because I like to say ABS stands for allows you to brake and steer rather than allows you to steer and brake. So, but other than that, absolutely. And the other part that happens is, again, a little bit of, physics that happens when you step on the brake. The weight transfers to the front wheels. And when the weight transfers to the front wheels, it gives the front tires more grip, which gives you more ability to try to steer around about why you stepped on the brake. So where if you said, oh, I don't have to step on the brake, I'll just swerve to one side or the other, your car may tend to skid more, where when you're on the brakes, the weight transfers to the front wheels, it gives you more control, more grip onto the ground, and you're allowed to work. You're allowed to let the car stop a little bit better. And yeah, absolutely. In day-to-day driving, you should never feel the anti-lock brakes kick in. They're going to, be pretty transparent. You're never going to feel anything. But that one time where you need to make that panic stop for whatever the reason is, be aware that the anti-lock brake is going to work. And I always try to tell people, whenever they get a new car and once it gets a little bit broken in, go out and drive at 30, 40 miles an hour, jam on the brakes and see what it's going to feel like. Because you may find that, like Jeremy, you said, your first 4 cars didn't have any anti-lock brakes. And if you're new to the feeling, and some cars feel different than others, know what it's going to feel like so it doesn't literally scare you when that time comes when you have to step on the brakes.
Yeah, that's one of the things we do at In Control. One of the very first things we do is just get you comfortable with using them, because they're an extremely valuable safety feature that your car has. And like John said, it's all about that weight transferring to the nose of the vehicle so that the weight is unable to transfer to the side and cause you to spin around if you do steer. So it's a really valuable tool to have. And we should definitely make sure that our cars have them. I will mention 2012 models sold in the United States or newer were required to have an ABS system. But also remember that your ABS system can fail and can go out. So if you have a light on your dash that says ABS or anti-lock and it's on and it stays on all the time, it means that ABS system is not functioning properly. So you should definitely get that checked out. You definitely want it to work. Your brakes will feel normal otherwise, though. Like John said, your everyday driving, you won't notice that you have them, but you want to make sure that you're aware of how you should hit the brake pedal in an emergency if you do have it. And with that ABS system, you hit that brake pedal as hard and as quickly as you possibly can if your goal is to stop or slow down in the shortest distance. Very, very important. It's not pumping the brakes. It's hit it as hard as you possibly can and leave it all the way down. So it just gives you an idea, what we're talking about here. With the ABS system, you're able to make that steering maneuver around it. Without it, you would end up potentially just sliding right into the object in front of you, or at least not being able to stop before it. So number 10 here is, it kind of comes full circle to what John mentioned at the very beginning. We all want to be able to drive longer, right? And as we live longer, we need to have that freedom to be able to be behind the wheel. So before you're at the point where you might need to stop driving, make sure you have a plan going in. So not only can you extend the amount of time that you're still a driver, you're still behind the wheel and have that freedom, but then you have a plan when that time ends. It's going to end for all of us eventually, right? So by using these tips, hopefully we can extend that a lot, but eventually we need to have a plan to still be mobile after our license isn't with us anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and Jeremy said it, we need to have a plan. We all have, people plan to retire, they plan to go on vacation, they plan to go to the supermarket. No one ever really says, I probably should plan on someday I'm going to give up driving. And what we want to try to do is keep people driving as long as they can do it safely. And a couple of real simple tips. as we age, our eyes tend to drop. We tend to look more right in front of the car than we do looking well down the road. And we all probably learned when we took driver's education back years ago, we heard something like leave 1 car length for every 10 miles an hour. Well, that's not nearly enough distance between you and the car in front of you when you're out on the highway. And we time it out in seconds. And at AAA, we say leave at least 3 seconds of following distance between you and the car in front of you. And at In Control, they actually have a really kind of fun exercise to do to measure following distance. But what we say is leave this 3 seconds of following distance. So the car in front of you goes by something, and it should take you about 3 seconds to get to that same fixed object that car in front of you. What really works nice is if you see a shadow on the road, you can see the car go right through the shadow. It should take you about 3 seconds. So get your eyes up and look down the road. So focus way down the road. So 20 or 30 seconds down the road, so you have time to react. Everybody here has probably seen a chain reaction crash where everybody just runs into everybody. If you were looking way down the road and looking at that first set of taillights rather than the set of taillights right in front of you, you're going to have a lot more time to react to that. And in inclement weather, rain and snow, you're looking way down the road and you might see a crash start to happen or someone start to skid. You can slow down and be prepared for it rather than being focused on that car right in front of you. The other thing is, and I never claim to be the best driver in the world. Jeremy's a great driver. I'm not the best driver in the world. What I do though is I get my eyes up, I look down the road, I keep plenty of room between me and the car in front of me. But the other important part that I do, whenever I have my eyes off the road directly in front of me, I take my foot and have it hovering over the brake pedal. It takes about anywhere from a half a second to a second to realize something happened. And it takes a half a second to a second, longer as we get older, to be able to react and then get your foot off the gas and step on the brake. So if I'm coming off the bottom or coming to the bottom of an off-ramp or an on-ramp coming into city traffic, and I glance over to see if anyone's coming, when my eyes are not on the road right in front of me, I have my foot over the brake pedal, because if I look back and the car in front of me came to a stop for whatever reason, my foot's already over the brake pedal, ready to stop, bring the car to a controlled stop. And the difference between a crash and one that didn't happen is just you didn't hit anybody. So if you can save as little as inches and don't hit the car in front of you, the crash didn't happen. So that's simple things, getting your eyes up, looking down the road, making sure you're focused on what you're doing. And whenever you don't have your eyes on the road in front of you, get your foot over the brake pedal. You'll find out that's one of those things that really helps you when it comes to as you start to age. And that's one of the big things that I do all the time, along combined with everything Jeremy was talking about, the mirror adjustments and all of that, to try to really, as I'm getting older, to try to be as competent a driver as I can.
John, that's great advice. And the 3 second rule is really important for everybody to try to follow. It just makes an absolutely enormous difference in your ability to stop. A lot of people follow just overall far closer than they should. The average driver is way too close. Just to sort of wrap up the mobility plan here too, though, I want to make sure I give AAA some credit. They have a great mobility plan app that you can use right on the AAA website, and the CDC has one as well. And so it's definitely something you're going to want to utilize and at least look through and say, all right, is this something I should start thinking about? For many of you, it's going to be years and years off, and that's fine. That's no big deal. But at least you have an idea that this plan like this exists, and we should start, making steps towards it potentially. Right. And for those of you guys that it's a little bit closer, right, start looking into what can I do to make sure that I am still active and mobile and doing everything I need to do and living a fun and fulfilled life, and whatever it means. A lot of people feel like they give up their freedom when they give up their license. The whole point of the mobility plan is that isn't necessarily true, right? There's a lot more that you can actually do, because it's going to come for all of us eventually, a day where it's not safe for us to be behind the wheel anymore.
No, and you make such a good point. And age isn't, it's a number on a driver's license. Age is a measurement of time. It isn't a measurement of whether you're a good or a bad driver. But what we know, the bad news is we're going to outlive our safe driving ability by 8 to 10 years. Unfortunately, that's, you talk to gerontologists, the people that really look at this kind of thing, and really we are going to outlive our safe driving ability. And sometimes what happens is the other part of that is the more we stay mobile, the healthier we'll be, because it's not just going to the doctors, it's that social interaction that helps keep us healthy too. So to be able to get out and be mobile is important. I had somebody in one of my programs, and he was probably in his late 70s, looked in really good shape, and he said to me, and he lived right outside of the city of Boston. He lived in, I don't know if he lived in Jamaica Plain or West Roxbury or something, but he said, I gave up driving. And I said, how come? You look in good shape. And he said, I just felt nervous when I was behind the wheel. And he said, what's really interesting about giving up driving was I'm actually saving money. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I have Uber and Lyft and I have friends. And he said, I looked at the cost of insuring my car. And here's a little secret. When you turn 65, you get an insurance discount in Massachusetts. As you get older, it starts to go away. So the older you get, the more your insurance starts to cost eventually too, because the people that figure out all this stuff out know that, as we get older, the chance of getting into a serious crash go up. But, he said, the cost of insuring my car is $1,500. I spend at least that much every year on maintenance. When I have to go somewhere, if I have to go into the city, it costs me to park. And he said, I just take an Uber or Lyft, and even though it sounded extravagant at first, it actually became cheaper, when I sit down and I look at some of the costs. And my mother drove till she was in her late 80s. And it was kind of funny. She stopped driving because while her car was in the driveway, a tree fell on it. And she kind of said, well, I guess at my age, I shouldn't get a new car. And I said, whew, that's a story I don't have to tell. So, and it was an old car, and she got like $3,000 from the insurance company. And I said, well, you ought to look into the city you live in has these transportation buses. They'll come and pick you up and bring you to an appointment or bring you to go see your cousin or whatever the case is. And she said, well, I looked into that. And, it's if I come to see you, it would cost $5 because I live the next town away. And I said, okay, so it's going to cost $10. And she said, yeah. And I said, so you got, $6,000 for your car when it got totaled. How many trips is that? And she kind of looked at me and said, a lot. I said, exactly. So even though you don't have your car anymore, it doesn't mean you need to stop going out and doing things, because that's important for our mental and physical well-being. So again, kind of have that plan in place and don't have to do it, don't wait till the tree falls on your car. This is my story. So.
All right. Well, I think that we have some questions. I saw some people type into you, Tracy. So Tracy, I don't know if you wanted to unmute yourself and we'll answer a couple questions for people.
Sure. We'll start with these questions, and then I'm sure people will also be able to, to raise their hand. So a question from Maria is, can you repeat how to set up the mirrors?
Sure. I sure can.
Like kind of chunk it down a little slower so that people can take notes and write it down.
Sure. So, I wish I had a good visual for you right here. Maybe that's something I can send out to you. It is one of InControl's like safe driving tip like images that we actually have how to do it. So maybe Tracy, I'll get that to you and you can forward it out to the group.
Sure.
But what I recommend is when you're in the driver's seat, get yourself set up, as John said, the proper height, the proper adjustment. So you're controlled behind the wheel. Make sure all the seat adjustments are made first. Then adjust the rear view mirror, the center view mirror, the one up above you here. Make sure that's centered in the back glass and you can see as far back as you can. Then I would move to the driver's side mirror. And what I'm recommending you do is when you're sitting normally, right now, you're most likely you can see the side of your car. I don't want that to be true anymore. So what I want you to do is tilt your head towards that driver's side window, okay? And when you make that tilt, now I want you to make the adjustment in the mirror only so you can see a sliver of the side of that car. So with your head tilted, so it's almost but not quite touching the side window, adjust that side mirror so you can only see a sliver of the back of the car. When you sit up normally and you have your hands on the wheel and you're driving, you should not see the side of your car. So once you've moved it out that way, what you can see now is what used to be that blind spot. Now, it often will go away completely, but as John said, there are some cars that do have not great visibility, kind of poor visibility. So there might still be a small blind spot there, but no matter what, when you move that mirror further out from the side, you are going to be able to see a lot more of where you couldn't before. Now, to move on to the passenger side, I recommend you tilt your head over that center console the same amount you tilted towards the window, just the opposite side, and now do the same thing on your passenger side. With your head tilted over the center console, you should only be able to see a sliver of the side of your car. And when you sit up normally, the side of the car, you can't see anymore, but you can see what used to be that blind spot on your passenger side. All right, and by doing that, you're gonna have a much better field of vision just by looking side to side in your mirrors rather than having to turn all the way around and try to look behind you. So,
Yeah,
John, anything there?
And that is also on, if you go to seniordriving.aaa.com, you'll also find it there as well. It explains it, and good for people like me, there's some pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. A picture would help a lot.
Yeah.
Worth 1,000 words. Tracy, another one?
Sure. Well, this is a quick one, and I think the answer is on the screen. Someone just asked, they wanted for you to repeat the course offering. So I assume they just go to www.driveincontrol.org or www.aaa.com and they can look up the course offerings for senior driving.
Yeah, the sites are pretty easy to navigate. There's going to be a section on the driveincontrol.org website specifically for seniors, but you can look around throughout the website for different things. There's you can sign up to be on our mailing list so you can get senior specific discounts, that sort of thing, or just see what we're doing and actually sign up for our driving tips. So we have, I think, 28 tips that go out this year that you'd be able to access to. And we do podcasts and other things. And occasionally the director, Dan Strillo's on John's show, The Car Doctor. So sometimes those podcasts might pop up there as well in the future. But yeah, as far as In Control, you can always ask us questions there too. There's a contact us button and you can type your questions right in there. And it might take a day, but they do get all the way through to me, and I do answer all of them.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
John, anything on AAA? I mean, I think the AAA website's extremely easy to use.
Yeah, and if people have questions specifically they would like me to answer, the easiest way to do it is, or the easiest way to remember, AAA.com/cardoctor. And even though that sounds like it's automotive related, ask a question there. I'm happy to answer it. And I try to answer everything like Jeremy does within a day. So always happy to. So AAA.com/cardoctor, a box will come up and it'll say, ask the expert. And I guess that's me.
Yeah. And as far as In Control goes, we're a driving program for anybody that drives. A lot of people have this assumption that we're a driver's ed school, and we are a driver education school, but we actually don't do any what you'd call conventional driver's ed. So we're training police and fire and ambulance drivers. We are training people on their permits, but we're training everybody from 96 being our oldest to 15 and a half, somebody with their permit in New Hampshire, right? We get everything in between. So it's not just for new drivers. And even if you're an excellent driver, you're gonna learn something with us.
Okay. Murad asked about the cameras, the technology. So and I actually was thinking of the same question. So I have a Toyota Sienna van that's about a year old, and I have the camera in the front dashboard. So when I back up, yes, I can see, I can back up. I don't really have to look. I don't have to turn around because I'm looking at the camera. However, my instincts are to scrap the technology, to look while I'm backing up, and then to stop and just kind of also use the technology in conjunction. So what's your advice? Because Murad had asked the same question.
Sure. Well, the first thing I'd say is think of the camera as another mirror, but don't utilize any one thing, right? So the camera can be great. It shows you what's directly behind the car. So I gave that example of 25 kids behind the car. If that car had a camera in it and they put the vehicle in reverse, then you'd see that there's kids behind the car. That's awesome because you didn't have that option before. But it does often give you a distorted view of what's around you. And it generally doesn't help you back into parking spaces. Usually your side mirrors, actually moving your head to the side to give you that reference to the side of the car, things along those lines are going to help you get between the two cars and get into the spot safely and make sure you're centered better than the camera actually will. But the camera will allow you to, when you're backing in that space, know when to stop before you back into the bumper of that small car that was behind you or anything along those lines. So cameras overall, any of the technology, we should look at it as a backup feature in general. They are fantastic. I'm glad cars have them. I have a car with it and a car without it. And I'm that much more reluctant to back up with a car that doesn't have it. But you shouldn't also be looking down at it and just going in reverse. That's not a good plan either. So I'd still kind of follow our rules. Don't back up, right? Back up slow and don't back up far. And if you do have to back up, use the mirrors, look over your shoulder if you can and you're comfortable, but utilize that camera too. Just don't rely on any one, or I should be moving around quite a bit. We want to know what's around us completely, not only what's right behind our car. John,
Yeah,
anything?
Jeremy's so right on that because I always like to say any automotive technology, whether it's backup cameras, lane keeping assistant, lane centering, all of that doesn't take the place of a fully engaged driver. And even as good as backup cameras are, it doesn't mean it's going to catch everything. And you may find that, you know, your dog is sitting by the back bumper of your car and your backup camera is not going to see them. And I stole an exercise from In Control where somebody I worked with at the time, she was a tiny person. She was, you know, maybe she weighed 100 pounds and she was 5 feet tall. And I had her tucked behind the bumper of a car. And while we were sitting there, we put the car in reverse. And the person behind the wheel, I said, "What do you see?" And they said, "Well, I don't see anything." And then I tapped on the side of the car and she stood up. Well, the backup camera never saw her because she was just kind of, and you know, we were kind of playing around with it. We hid her that way on purpose. But the whole point was that it doesn't see everything. So before you go to get in the car to back up, take a look behind the back of the car, walk behind the car, make sure there's nothing there before you put the car in reverse, and then use that backup camera as an aid in backing up, just like you use the mirrors in your car.
Absolutely, especially coming in and out of garages. That's another a good time when the backup camera really doesn't help you. And so for me, it's this mirror, you know, behind me, this mirror, down at the, you know, down at the backup camera, what's behind me. So just use all the different technology your car has, right? Don't limit yourself to any one.
Okay. I actually took my oldest son, I remember years ago, to In Control. And I remember that they showed us, they had someone squat down behind the back of the car. I actually specifically remember that incident, that you could not see that person.
It's surprising.
Yeah.
Right? Son of my future. I'm going to move myself over this way, I think.
Esther has a question. What cars do you recommend that are senior friendly? That are, you know, I mean, that are just better for older adults?
When you can get cars that have, part of it sounds kind of funny, but part of it is comfort. Part of it's being able to get in and out of a car. And as we get older, you know, we tend to groan more as we move, right? We tend to, you know, when we're getting up off the couch or something like that. So try to find a car that's going to be comfortable to drive, that's going to give you good visibility. Now, let's take the technology aside for a minute. And in a lot of cases, and people are a little surprised about this, in a lot of cases, it's a small SUV. It's something like a Honda CR-V or maybe a Ford Escape. And first off, it's going to be easy to get in and out of. It's like getting in, you know, sitting in a kitchen chair. You're going to be able to get in and out of it without having to force yourself to lift up and slide out of the seat, or you know, pull on the steering wheel or pull on the door to get in and out of the car. That's going to help. The other thing is overall visibility. You're going to sit up a little bit higher, so you're going to get a better view of the road around you. Then, you know, making sure that the head restraints are comfortable and they're adjusted so you're comfortable with the car. almost all cars, not every car, but almost all cars have adjustable height seat belts. So you want to make sure that's good. Drive the car at night. Make sure the headlights are going to give you enough light. There's a kind of a minimum lighting rule, but some headlights are better than others, and you'll find out that they're more comfortable. So, you know, some cars, you may even find a car here and there that has adjustable height foot pedals, so you can keep that good safe distance between you and the airbag, but be able to move the pedals up a little bit so you're sitting a little bit further away. Not as many cars have that anymore, but look for cars with tilt and telescoping steering wheels so you can get that airbag a good distance between you, so a good 10-inch distance between you and the steering wheel. Those are things that are going to help. Unfortunately, and sometimes we want to reward ourselves as we get older, and you know, we always, you know, maybe we wanted that big luxurious car, and you might find out that big luxurious car is too much car for you to handle these days. So maybe something smaller, more compact with better visibility is a lot better choice.
Well, and even that, you know, bigger is not necessarily safer. You know, when we talk about, I often get asked about teen drivers, you know, kids getting their first car, what should they get? And I'll often recommend something smaller, not even an SUV. It makes a ton of sense for a smaller SUV for more of a senior driver for all the reasons you said. But just understand that, you know, getting that big Suburban or getting yourself a big pickup truck just because you like being in something bigger doesn't actually mean you're safer, right? First, it's heavier, it's higher, it can be more likely to roll over. There can be downsides to it too, in other words. But be comfortable, make sure you fit well with the car. That's a big part of it. I have certain cars that I drive that it just, the seat, no matter how I move it, it doesn't feel right for me. And I just don't love driving those cars. And when you're not comfortable in the car, the experience can certainly change a little bit, and you can actually become a little bit less safe in certain scenarios. So, you know, and then the other thing, and, you know, John Paul had said, technology aside, that's the last part. Make sure that there is a lot of that good safety technology, because although I said you need to know how to use it properly, it's all still valuable when we do know how to use it properly. And whether it's blind spot monitoring or cameras or certainly ABS brakes, they're huge, huge benefits to us, and we should use them. You know, I've talked to a lot of people that said, oh, I know what I'm doing, I don't need ABS brakes. Well, great. But ABS brakes make it so much easier and so much safer that you really can't replace them. We as humans can't do what the ABS system actually does for us. So make sure you have those same basic safety features.
Yeah, and ABS brakes never panic, and that's our biggest fault when things go wrong, is we panic and we jam on the brakes and we forget to steer, and whatever the case is. But it's so important today to road test the technology as it is to road test the car. So you want to make sure that some of these systems work. And what we found at AAA is some of them work better than others. So you want to see what you're going to get. And then once you get the car home, you want to look through the least read book ever made, and that's the owner's manual. And unfortunately, that's the first thing people take out of the car because it takes up so much room, and they take it out of the glove compartment and they never look at it again. So you want to read through the owner's manual. I like to joke with people, the best looking part of any car in a junkyard is the owner's manual, because it never gets used. And really look through it and find out what all the different warning lights mean. I was in a woman's car that she had owned the car for 4 years, and I asked her how she liked it. She said, you know, I really like this car, except for the fact the seatbelt really comes across my neck and it's uncomfortable. And she was fairly tall too. And I reached over and I lifted up the seatbelt and clicked and moved it up so it was more comfortable. And she's like, wow, how'd you do that? And I said, there's an adjustment right on the seatbelt. You can move it up and down. And she's like, I've owned this car for 4 years. I never knew that. Again, simple things that you can do that can make your car more comfortable and be safer for you.
So just to follow up, you mentioned the Honda CR-V and the Ford Escape. Esther had asked that question. I know you're not endorsing anything, but are there a couple names, other types of cars that you can give us a name of?
Well, I think there isn't a bad car made today. There's some that are priced ridiculously expensive, and there's some that, you know, there's maybe a couple out there that don't run to the top of the list of quality wise, But cars today are so much better than they were years ago. They last so much longer. They have so much more safety technology in them. It's still, it's hard to find really a bad car, but you have to find the car that matches you. And you may find that, you know, you always wanted I don't know, a Volkswagen Passat because you always thought they were great cars. And they're phenomenal cars, but you may find that you get in it and you go, you know, I really can't see the right rear corner of the car when I go to back up. Or I look out the driver's door and I don't get a good view because the mirrors, I just can't get the mirrors adjusted right. Or I can't see enough forward to the car to be able to get a good view. And as good as a car is, it may not be the car for you. And like Jeremy pointed out, some cars he's just not comfortable in. And that's going to happen. But I found for the most part, a lot of the smaller SUVs, and I don't care if it's, you know, one of the more inexpensive ones like a Buick Encore or something, you know, more expensive and fancier like something from Acura or Lexus, that ability to sit up a little higher, get in and out of the car, and have controls that are comfortable and easy to use, and for you to be able to recognize what they all do. That's what makes the car safer.
Someone just made a comment that they're happy with their Camry. They're a smaller person and they said they were happy. So I just wanted to mention that.
Toyota Camry's a great car.
Yeah, that's why they sell 1 billion of them.
So for an older adult who might have arthritis or a cane or a walker, and let's say they're not driving the car, but they're a passenger. Let's say their spouse or partner or aide or adult child comes to help them to take them for an errand. Is it, again, better to step into like a Honda CR-V, step up into that car versus to get down into a sedan? I think from personal experience with my mom, I think it was easier for her to, with a walker, to step up.
Yeah, it really depends. I know somebody who was in exactly that situation, and they bought a Subaru Outback because it was just a couple inches higher off the ground, but it also made it easier for them to get in and out of it. And it was mostly because they took care of their aunt, and it was easy for them. And the nice thing about having, you know, in that case is that you're able to, you know, have somebody help you get in and out. But still, even as we age and have issues with arthritis, sometimes a fatter steering wheel in the car is more comfortable to hold on to. A heated steering wheel in cold weather is nice if you have arthritis. And a push button start, for instance, a lot of cars today have push button start instead of having to put a key in the ignition, turn it. For somebody who's using that, it's you know, that's where sometimes arthritis and limited mobility can be an issue sometimes as well. They have these kind of, you know, things you can use to try to, you know, even to the point of finding a car that doesn't have a gas cap. Some of the new cars don't have gas caps, and when you open up the gas door, there's no gas cap. You just stick the gas nozzle in. Well, I've seen some older people struggling getting the gas cap off because of arthritis issues. So as you're looking for certain cars, you may find little things like that can make that car that much more likable to own.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. I never thought of that. Some of our in control cars actually have that where there's no gas cap, and it's just I go to reach for it each time, and that's a wonderful reason to not have it too.
Yeah,
if you actually need it, right?
Yep.
So one gentleman asked, what are the signs that you should stop driving?
No one wants to drive with you anymore. So if you have a group of friends and they say, you know what, Charlie, you know, I don't think I don't really want to. That's one of the signs. Getting lost, you know, seriously getting lost when you go out. Mystery scrapes and dings and dents. You look at your car and you kind of go, I wonder where that came from, or a broken taillight, and you're like, I wonder where that came from. Those are things that can start to give you a little bit of a clue. The idea that everyone is driving too fast and everyone's too reckless. That you feel intimidated when you're on the road, that can be some of it. And then go to your doctors and make sure your vision is good. Make sure that physically you're as healthy as you can be. But when AAA periodically does something called car fit, which is trying to get you as your driver accustomed to your car. And one of the things that we always did with it was we would walk around the person's car and kind of look it over. And we'd look at it and go, oh, they hit hit a curb with the front tire here. There's a dent here. And always kind of ask, how did this happen? How did this happen? And if the person said, oh, I hit a curb, well, but if they're like, oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember this. I don't remember this. Those are some things that can kind of give you a little bit of a clue. I had somebody I knew who they asked me to take their friend for a ride one day and just how they're doing. And I'm not a driving evaluator, but I've been driving and I kind of know what to look for. And this person did great. They were driving the speed limit. They had the car perfectly positioned. They backed into a parking space. They prided themselves on being able to back up. And once we got to where we were supposed to go, he kind of looked at me and said, what are we doing here? And he just didn't remember. And that, those things are some of the clues. And, some of them you can compensate for, some of them you can't. And you have to watch out for that. So, knowing kind of when and where, that's part of it. So, it's a hard decision and it's awfully hard to self-evaluate. There are companies that will come out and do evaluation, and some of the big hospitals can do evaluation. Beth Israel and those places. It's expensive though, and but they can do driver evaluations if you think you need it. But most people know when they're starting to slip a little bit, and just be aware of you're not necessarily going to get better as you age. And just be aware of it.
I want to add one more thing, lost keys. The driver drives and then, just doesn't know where they put their keys.
I've lost my keys twice today.
All right. This is a quick one about the windshield cleaner. You mentioned sprayway cleaner. There was another name. Somebody.
The other one's a product called Invisible Glass, and it's made by a company called Stoner Products. And sprayway is cheaper, and I think it works just as well. And you can buy it, in supermarkets and department stores. And
I can speak to Invisible Glass. We use Invisible Glass. It's fantastic, but it's a little bit expensive.
Can you buy it at Walmart, that type of thing?
Yep. Yeah, but the sprayway stuff, it comes in a blue and white can. And the important thing is get a good microfiber cloth afterwards to wipe off the window. You find out that makes a huge difference. And back in the old days, they used to use newspaper to clean glass. But today, all the newspaper is recycled and nobody buys the paper anymore either.
That's true. Yeah, but as John said, make sure you do the inside too, because that film, you might not even notice is there, and all of a sudden you just run your finger along it, and there's, oh, my windshield's dirty, right? You don't even notice because it's that kind of gas that just fixates to your windshield over time, and you don't even really know it's there. It just sort of fogs over, but it doesn't look like it's dirty. So inside and out for sure.
It's like back in the old days when people smoked in their cars, and you get that sort of smoky nicotine film. That's kind of what's coming off the inside of your car, which can't be healthy.
Someone's asking about steering with anti-collision. So it says, how about the steering with anti-collision?
Probably so steering with anti-lock brakes is most likely the question.
Yeah, it's not clear. It just says, how about the steering with anti-collision? But that also goes with, people are also asking about the anti-lock brakes. And you mentioned from 2012, after that, it's required. So one of the questions was, how do we know if we even have anti-lock brakes?
Sure.
I don't know what car that person has, but it sounds like if it's before 2012, what do they do?
Sure. So there's a small light on your dashboard. If your car has an ABS braking system, when you first turn the car on, the whole dash lights up like a Christmas tree, right? There's an ABS light, an oil light, and a battery light. All the lights come on. And so you're going to want to look for something that's yellow, orange, or red. It could potentially be any of the three colors. And it'll say ABS or anti-lock, but generally it'll say ABS. Usually there's a circle around it too, just to give you a little bit of clarity, but look all over your dash. You might have to do that. You turn the key on, you look over here. Okay. And then they all go back off. They're all supposed to go back off once you start the car. You might have to turn it off again and try it again over here. Oh, there's that light. So ABS or anti-lock on the dash, that light should come on just like all the other ones do. And then it should go off just like all the other ones do, right? And that means it's working properly. If your ABS light is on all the time when you're driving around, it means there's a problem with the ABS system. It's a warning light, just like an oil light or a coolant light, a battery light. So make sure that you get that checked out immediately if that light's on all the time when you're driving. But that's the easiest way to check. John, anything else you wanted to add there? And you might have a better idea, actually. Is there anything else it might say other than anti-lock or ABS?
No, you're gonna either see ABS or occasionally anti-lock, but mostly ABS. It's going to be an amber color light. The red brake light is a brake warning light for either you left the parking brake on or there's a hydraulic brake failure. So yellow ABS means that the system, if it's staying on all the time, like you said, Jeremy, it means the system is malfunctioning. Doesn't mean it's not going to stop. It's just not going to stop with anti-lock brakes. So in fact, in some states, if the ABS light's on, you could still get an inspection sticker. Massachusetts is one of those. New York is one of those. Rhode Island isn't, because the brakes are still going to be functioning kind of pre-2012. So that's about it. And you should see it. It should, if you just turn the key to the on position, all the lights should come on, all the warning lights should come on, and then they should start to go back off, and that should be it.
Yeah. Tracy, the person with the anti-collision, were they talking about an automatic system, like an automatic braking vehicle? Can they steer while the vehicle's automatically braking?
I'm going to ask Chris McDaniel to maybe unmute herself. It says, no, the anti-collision. If the car slams on the brakes, can we still steer? That's the question.
Yeah, I think she's talking about if the car actually does it for her. So feel free, whoever asked I'm sorry, who was it?
Yes, I am talking about if the car itself slams on the brakes, can you still steer it like you said you could with the anti-locking brakes?
Yep. Well, that's tough. I wouldn't, what I would recommend is if the car slams on the brakes for you, that should be your signal that obviously there's something in front of you, and you should react by hitting the brake pedal as hard as you can anyway, right? So you should react, and it's a wonderful feature to have the car hit the brakes for you, but the car only sort of knows what's going on. Your brain is much more capable than the car actually is in many circumstances. So if the car slams on the brakes for you, you should slam on the brake. And if you have fully engaged the ABS braking system, then you have an ABS braking system, which I guess you absolutely would if you have an automatic braking feature in your car. If you've slammed on the brakes and the ABS brakes are fully engaged, then you can steer. I wouldn't necessarily trust steering the vehicle with a vehicle hitting the brakes. It might confuse the vehicle.
The anti-collision thing is not so great because I was driving on the parkway. There was nothing in front of me. Now, thank God nobody was behind me, but the car itself just slammed on the brakes.
Yeah, that's pretty rare, but it sort of does happen.
I took it to Honda and they were like, oh no, we can't find anything. And then I was on the highway and the warning of the brake, you know how it'll tell you to brake? It'll go brake, 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 brake. And there was nothing going on either. So I have to shut that off now because I don't trust it.
I was going to tell you the best thing I would say to you is to shut that feature off because there is something wrong with it. And I would continue to bring it, if it's under warranty, continue to bring it to Honda and tell them that, look, this is going to cause a problem. We're going to need to, you guys have to address this.
Yeah, they won't do anything about it. I've been several times. The only thing you could do is shut it off, but you have to shut it off every time you start the car because it's an automatic on.
Yeah. Automatic emergency braking is a really good feature.
I thought it was going to be
where to the point in, I think, 2022, it's going to become required equipment in all new cars. But it can fail. And I had somebody who wrote to me with a Subaru with automatic emergency braking, and it was also acting up. And come to find out what it was was a spider had built a spider web in front of the camera, and occasionally the spider web would flicker in front of the camera, and it was just enough for the car to think something
Okay.
was going on. And it can, I think in this case, if I was you, I would go back and talk to your Honda dealer and ask them if they can get a field technical engineer out to look at your car and do a little bit more thorough investigation of what's wrong. Because too often they'll take it for a ride around the block. They'll say, oh, it seems fine. They'll plug it into the computer. Oh, there's no fault codes. And they say, oh, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. See if, and you may need to go to your owner's manual, call the 800 number for Honda customer service and request to see if you can get a field technical engineer to come out and look at the car.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Someone
As
just
a quick
wrote-
follow-up,
someone
what
just
kind of-
wrote- I just want to, somebody
Yeah,
just
sorry.
said, write to the Globe or contact your regional office, as you just said as well, John.
Great, yeah. My only question was, what kind of Honda is it, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a CRV, a 2018.
Okay, so it has two different, it's doing this with two different things. There's a camera on the other side of your rear view mirror that's looking out of the windshield, and then there's a sensor in
On
the
the front.
grill of your car as well.
Yeah.
That bottom, the one in the grill has a cover over it. And
Yeah.
it does, if you can look up how to take that cover off and clean it and then make sure the windshield is clean, it might at least help reduce the chance of that happening. But there is a high chance, like John said, that there could even be a nest of something inside it, behind in the wiring, or
You know,
you know,
that
above the sensor itself.
the thing about the nest or something else, I never thought of. But the other thing with the camera in the front and the grill, that already caused a problem too, because there was snow or something, like ice slid down, and then a warning all came on the screen of, you know, it can't work and you got to do something. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
unfortunately with this technology, when we need it the most, it shuts itself off. So when we want it to work in really bad weather, in the snow and in heavy rain, it tends to shut itself off because it works a lot like what we do. It needs to see things. And if it can't see, it's going to shut the system down. So that's why we don't really have cars that drive themselves yet.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this way. Overall, this new technology is a net positive, right? It's saving lives, it's helping, it's a good thing, but it's not perfect, and that's why we need to make sure that we can react. So, you know, what I have a hard time with right now is that it's reacting when it isn't needed at all, and that obviously is a more dangerous situation. So I would absolutely follow John's advice.
I'm afraid of my own car.
I hear you.
And that's why I bought it, because I thought this will be great. I won't run into anything. And in fact, like when it slammed the brakes on the parkway, luckily nobody was around me. I mean, my pocketbook fell off the seat. That's how hard it braked. So,
Yeah.
But it went right off. It didn't continue. So, you know, I was able to keep
No,
going.
I would definitely call Honda customer service, not the dealership, but, you know, skip over the dealership if you have to. Call the 800 number for Honda and say, here's the problem I'm having, and the dealer just can't fix it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Alice,
It was really nice. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Alice is asking, again, I think you mentioned this, but she just wants to break it down again, how to handle the car in a skid. So I'm not sure if Alice, if you want to unmute yourself, do you have ABS brakes? I'm not sure if she's still there, but let's see, Alice.
Let's see if she can unmute herself. That's great. But I think if she means if the car's sliding, how do you regain control of the
Right,
car?
correct.
Might be the question. So probably most of you guys have heard the term "turn into the skid" before, and my only problem with that term is it's a little confusing.
Totally.
It's hard to remember. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do we have Alice? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Alice chimed in. So turn into the skid. It's confusing and it doesn't necessarily complete the thought. So here's a simpler way of thinking about it. All right. Point the wheels of the car in the direction you want the car to be going in. I know that sounds extremely simple, but it is the same thing as turn into the skid, but it completes the thought. It's not as catchy, but it works every single time. So give you an idea here, I'll push myself back a little bit. If I'm driving down the road and I make a left turn, the car starts sliding out like this behind me, this is turning into the skid. It's also the direction I want the car to be aimed in, is as I'm recovering from that slide, I keep the wheels pointed where I want to go, and I'm able to recover from that slide. Depending on the situation, if ice is a factor, we want to look where we want to go. We point the wheels in the direction we want to go in. And if we're on the ice or the snow or slippery condition, then we would also encourage you to hit that ABS brake pedal at that point as well. But, that's what I always say. Point the vehicle in the direction you want that vehicle to go. And it's just a much simpler way of thinking about it overall, if that makes sense. John, any follow-up on that?
No, you brought up the important part. Look and steer where you want to go, because our hands tend to follow our eyes. And anyone who's ever driven down the road and you see anything from, I don't care if it's a farm stand, a pretty house to look at, whatever the case is, you take your eyes off the road, you look over, next thing you know, the car's going in that direction. So look and steer where you want to go. So, the hard part, don't panic. The next part is steer where you originally wanted the car to go, but make sure you look there, because if you're going to be focused on the big tree, chances are you're going to hit the big tree.
Yep, that's a great point. Really, the vehicle really does go wherever you look. And that'll also help you not overcorrect. You see people, it's not the initial slide, it's often the correction that causes the problem. So if you're keeping the wheels pointed in the direction you want to go in, because you're looking there, you'll only steer as much as you need and not more, which is a huge benefit. You won't cause a problem in the other direction.
I think we ended all the questions. I actually wanted to throw a question. I know some
Sure.
older adults sometimes will drive below the speed limit. And I remember years and years ago, my dad was driving, I'm not sure exactly where it was, but I just remember he got a ticket for driving too slowly, too slow. So can you address that?
Well, there are roads that actually have minimum speed limits. For the longest time, the Mass Pike had a minimum speed of, I think it was 45 miles an hour.
Yep.
So you could technically be ticketed if you were going less than the speed limit. If you're driving less than the speed limit, considerably less than the speed limit, chances are you're probably starting to have some issues with being able to keep good control of the car. Now, speed limits are designed for roads that are in optimal condition under optimal times. So you're not going to do 65 miles an hour out on Route 128 when there's bumper to bumper traffic, because you just can't. On the other hand, you're not going to drive at 65 miles an hour when there's fog where you can't see 100 feet in front of you. But under optimal conditions, when the roads are dry and the sky's clear, that's the speed limit. And if in that case you're driving at 35 out on the highway where you should be going 60 or 65, that's an indication that maybe you're starting to have some problems and the car isn't comfortable for you anymore. And that's where you have to look. That's where you have to really look inward. The one other thing that I want to point out, and this happens, we hear this a lot, is, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. My wife and I have been married for, I should know, right? I should know how many years?
You're supposed to.
Yeah, 40-some-3, I think. And when we get in the car together, since we were 16, I typically always drove. It's not a bad idea to switch that off periodically, because I hear from people sometimes, and it's usually women, who'll say, can I get some driving lessons because, my husband passed away and I didn't drive much for the past 30 or 40 years. So it's not a bad idea every once in a while. Take turns. Whoever the spouse is that drives the most, take a break. Let the other person drive. You'll find it helps keep your driving skills sharp that way.
That's a good question.
Absolutely.
Good comment. I'm just writing that down. What about just quickly, I don't know if everyone knows this, so windshield, it gets like you're driving on the Mass Pike and a rock hits the windshield or something hits it. Do you just want to touch on that? I believe insurance companies always pay without question, but if you just want to.
Yeah. In Massachusetts, you don't have to have it, but it's silly not to. just about everybody has glass coverage on their car. That's different than other states like Rhode Island, for instance. But yeah, most people have glass coverage as part of their regular insurance. And yeah, if a stone hits your windshield and it cracks it, and if the crack is more than, say, the size of a quarter, call your insurance company. They'll arrange to either take it to a glass shop, or most glass shops today come out to you. And it's pretty painless. You sign something and, you know, an hour later you have a new windshield in your car.
Yeah, and it's completely no contact, especially even right now. They'll come right to your house or your place of business, or even probably to the temple parking lot if that's, you know, where you happen to be. So, and even a small, fairly small crack can really have an impact on the integrity of the windshield overall. So the next rock, you know, might cause a much larger problem. So even small ones, at least get them checked out. It's worth it to have that windshield that protects you.
Okay, I don't think there's any more questions, so I just wanted to throw in one more: crosswalks. I think we are all of us are probably guilty at some point in our lives of going through a crosswalk, thinking we didn't see somebody, and all of a sudden, as we go through the crosswalk, we're like, oh my gosh, did you see that person was standing in the corner there? So in the next town, Needham, there was an accident a couple of years ago, and two separate drivers ran over two teenagers from Needham High School, and both teenagers were killed in the crosswalk. And I just wanted you to, when we wrap it up, just to mention crosswalks, how we can, all of us, young drivers, older drivers, beginner drivers, drivers who are seasoned drivers, just all be more mindful of going through crosswalks.
Yeah, it is you know, a lot of times you see the crosswalk before you see the person. So it's sort of one of those things, whenever you see the crosswalk, either sign or the painted crosswalk in the road, always just assume there's going to be a pedestrian there. And they may be tucked out behind a car, they may be up on the sidewalk still, whatever the case happens, just always assume that a pedestrian is going to be there. And yeah, I mean, every once in a while you're gonna see somebody and they're off to your left, and you know, we all tend to have primary, you know, one eye is a little bit more dominant than the other, so maybe we don't see off to the left as well as we see off to the right. Force yourself to look left and right whenever you see the crosswalk markings, and that's going to help you be that much more aware. Again, if you're only looking right in the front of the car, you're not going to be able to react quick enough when you see somebody there. So, and especially in the spring and the fall, when the sun's a lot lower in the horizon, that's when you really need to make sure you have your sunglasses, because in the summertime, when the sun's high in the horizon, it's actually a lot easier to see out of your windshield than when it's a lot lower in the horizon. Sun comes right in the windshield, you're not going to be able to see. Near where I live, someone got hit in a crosswalk. They were out early morning, the sun was just coming up, and I could see exactly how it could happen. The sun was right in their windshield and just couldn't see them. But if you're aware that's where the crosswalk is, you're going to take that extra little bit of caution. And yeah, you might slow down a little bit to give a quick look. You know, much safer that way.
Yeah, as John said, you know, the further down the road you look, the wider your field of vision is. So if you're looking only what's right in front of the car and looking fairly low, it's really easy to miss things on the side of the road. So the further down the road you look and you see that crosswalk coming, whether it's the paint or the sign or whatever it might be, and take your foot off the gas and hover it over the brake, or even slow down a little bit potentially. I almost treat them like intersections, especially during, you know, this COVID time that we're in right now. Everybody's out and about on the roads and walking and walking their dogs and going for bike rides. And this is awesome. That's great. You know, I hope that doesn't stop, but it does mean that those intersections, pedestrian or, you know, for cars are busier. So just keep that in mind and take your foot off, slow down a little bit if need be. And if you happen to be that pedestrian, make sure cars stop too, right? I mean, it's a two-way street, but we're in these cars, we're in a big, heavy piece of machinery. It's our responsibility to make sure, you know, we continue to keep the roads as safe as possible for cars and pedestrians.
Well, thank you so much. Oh, good.
I was going to say, Jeremy, you make a good point. Just because you're in the crosswalk doesn't mean that traffic's going to stop automatically. Right. So even though it should, and even though pedestrians always have the right of way, don't just automatically assume that I'm in a crosswalk, I'm just going I'm just going to walk out in the middle of traffic and it's going to come to a stop. Look and be careful before you venture out.
And as a driver, you know, we talk about, you know, we didn't talk necessarily about distracted driving in this talk today, but there's lots of distracted walking. And I see kids on their bicycles on their phone and they have no idea where they're going. All of a sudden they're crisscrossing across my lawn, on my front lawn. And so just be aware that that's going on as well. So they really might just continue to walk right out in front of your car. And so just, you know, be extra cautious, right? This thing's happening on all levels, not only in the car. People are distracted by phones and all kinds of other things all the time.
And I think I'm seeing more and more people, which is a good thing, riding bikes.
Yeah.
You know, for exercise because people are cooped up and they're not going to their gyms. But on the other hand, it's just more people on the roads. More.
Absolutely.
You know, so we're going to close now. I just wanted to make a quick comment. My middle son years ago was in Japan visiting someone, and I remember the comment that he made to me is the family that he was visiting. He said, "I don't get this, but every time they drive somewhere, they don't drive. Let's if they're going into a driveway or going into a school parking lot, they always always back in to then go forward out." And he noticed it not just with this family, but across the board. That's all that they were doing there, where he was. So just wanted to throw that out.
It can be a cultural thing. You know, when you do it, if you go to the grocery store and take a pull-through space or you back into a space, when you come back out after doing your shopping, you might notice that 3 or 4 other cars all of a sudden did it too.
Right.
And so, you know, when you think about when are you in a rush, when you get somewhere or when you're leaving somewhere? Usually when you leave somewhere, whether it's work or school or temple, right? You're running a little bit late, you got to get in. Well, after it's done, you come out and you go, oh, all right, I've got more, you know, I've got more time, right?
Well, thank you so much. I didn't realize this ran over about 45 minutes. So I think we were all engaged and had a lot of questions. So again, thank you for giving of your time so graciously to our community, to Temple Emmanuel and to the Newton community. I believe everybody really enjoyed this, and they had very good questions, very pointed questions. This was wonderful. So really, we thank you so much. And I hope at some point you can come back, both of you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, thank you,
so
John,
much.
for being part of it as well.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Stay
Have
safe.
a great night, everybody. Take care.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.